Hey guys, Joe Miles here with Osseo Gear. This is the Mission Whitetail Podcast. We're going to be doing a deep dive into what it truly takes to kill these mature bucks. We're going to step outside the box and look at the why for gear, tactics, training, and more importantly, the mindset from over 35 years of chasing these magnificent animals all over North America. Thank you for following along and welcome to Mission Whitetail.
All right, guys, welcome back to Mission Whitetail episode 63. We've got our good buddy, Mr. Bobby Worthington, today to talk about the release of his new book. We are so excited about that, cannot wait. And we're also, once we talk about the book, we're going to dive into all things traditional bow hunting. I have gotten some lessons from Bobby and come back home and been shooting the recurve quite a bit the last month and getting pretty good at it. So excited about today's episode. Bobby, tell us a little bit about how everything's going in your world.
Hey, Joe, appreciate you inviting me on here. It's going good, just busy as usual, just been covered up. Spending a lot of time with this book. I really put my heart and soul into it, and this week I got the final take on it. We got the final corrections done and got laid out the way we wanted, and it is actually going to the printer, I think, this week. So I'm not sure of the date, but then of course you've got to get it printed then bound. It's going to take a little time, but it's been a life's work, and I'm really excited about it, Joe.
I tell you, the excerpts that I have read when I was up there at your house and what you've shared with me over the last couple months, I mean, it really is, to me, going to be the quote-unquote Bible of whitetail hunting. I mean, it's got everything in it a guy needs, from shooting to practice to setup to funnels, the whole shebang. I mean, it is going to be something really special.
Yeah, in Passionate Quest, the archery section was on shooting a compound bow, and in this one it's going to be shooting a recurve bow. I want to clear up a few things. A lot of people's wondering what actually is in this book. I've co-authored 2 or 3 books. I don't know where they're at. I've had people to pay me to write chapters early on, but then I wrote Bow Hunting Trophy Whitetail, and it was published by North American Whitetail Magazine. It's the only book they ever published. And then I wrote Passionate Quest. I just want to say that Passionate Quest was a volume 2 of Bow Hunting Trophy Whitetails. Everything in Bow Hunting Trophy Whitetails was in Passionate Quest, but about double the information. It was about double the page numbers. And then I want to say in Final Quest, excuse me, in Final Quest, there's new chapters, and there's new information in every chapter and on every page. Final Quest is a volume 2 of Passionate Quest, and it has double the information in Passionate Quest. So I just want to say that people out there that's tried for years to get a hold of Passionate Quest and couldn't find it, and if they could find it, it was just too high to afford, and I understand that. I've seen it go for $2,000.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, heck, we were at that trade show and we in Shipshawana, and guys were paying you what, $1,500, $2,000 a book for it.
Yeah, I took 4 and sold them out quick, but yeah. And Final Quest has Passionate Quest inside of it. It's a volume 2 of Passionate Quest, and it's got about double the information. And even if you've read Passionate Quest, if you don't read every page of Final Quest, you're going to miss out on a lot, because I have reworked and added things to every single page. I'll give you a quick review in the review or the overview of Final Quest in the introduction part. This is how I sum it up.
Okay.
Within this book, you will discover an overwhelming serving of knowledge, along with philosophies, advice, riddles, poems, laughter, and tears. In Final Quest, you will encounter the spirit of the whitetail and the heart of a hunter. And so I think that's a pretty good summary in a nutshell. And I also want to say, Joe, that there's 5 recurring themes or words in Final Quest that, as I age, I've come to understand are really significant to understand in all avenues of life, as well as in hunting. And I'll give you a quick rundown of these. They are knowledge, mathematics in your decision making, the significance of the correct expectations, and me and you've talked about that some, Joe. And then woodsmanship skills. I'm afraid this is becoming a lost art. And then you'll find the theme of respect for the white-tailed deer. So to go over them again, and it's the importance of correct knowledge, the importance of mathematics in decision making, the significance of having the right expectations. The whole book teaches woodsmanship skills. That's what the whole book is about. And then respect for the white-tailed deer. And if we've got about 5 minutes or 7 minutes, Joe, I'd like to talk just a little bit about each one of these words.
No, absolutely. The thing I like when you're on, Bobby, is I kind of just let you talk, because everybody just gobbles up everything you have to say. So fire away. Take over and let's go through all that.
Okay, let's look at knowledge first. It's often in this book I talk about knowledge, and it'll surprise you to the number of individuals that really don't have a clue to the value of knowledge. They just don't take the time before they start something, Joe, to sit down and to learn as much as possible about it. A lot of the times they don't ask questions, and because they don't, then they really don't have the right information. And you can judge a person's intelligence not by the opinions he's always spewing out, but by the interesting, in-depth, and thought-provoking questions that he asks. Every single person you shake hands with in life, and everybody really that you meet on any level knows something that you don't. The problem is that most people are too invested in protecting their own ego to learn from others. And Joe, I've got to commend you on this. This is something I noticed about you the first time I met you. You're open-minded, and you're a good listener, and most important, you ask good, in-depth questions. And because of that, you have learned a lot in life. You've got a lot of knowledge, and you will continue to gain knowledge, because you're not sitting around worried about, well, if I ask this question, it might seem like I don't know anything. You're not worried about protecting your own ego. You're worried about learning things, and that is so important.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and yeah, the amount of knowledge, being around guys like you and Don, it's been, almost a mentor type thing where you if you're able to check the ego, we talk about that a lot. You really can become a sponge and gobble up information from people that have actually been there and done it. And that's the important thing to me, is where guys get their information from. It's so easy, nowadays with podcasts and stuff, to have things just regurgitated over and over and over again. But when you get the opportunity to spend time with a guy like you, Bobby, the amount of information, real information and real knowledge you can gain, you have to soak it up.
Well, it ain't just for me. You're willing to listen to everybody. Like I said, everybody in life you meet knows something you don't, and you're willing to listen to everybody, and it's amazing to me. I have a problem with wanting to throw in halfway through somebody's sentence. I want to ask them something else or make a comment, but you're very good on listening, and you've gained a lot of knowledge and will continue to gain knowledge because of that.
Well, I appreciate that.
That's the first time I was around you, I noticed that you're quiet a lot more than you talk, and that's important. And that's the thing I talk often in this book, and really that's what this book's all about. It ain't about gimmicks. I'll tell you, guys, hope your wives ain't in the room, but buying the newest bow on the market or the most expensive tree stand will not make you a better hunter. What is required is the same thing required in learning and advancing in any skill. It's knowledge, and really that's what Final Quest is all about. That the whole book is full of knowledge. It ain't about trying to sell products. It's all about knowledge. And then I wanted to mention about mathematics, and we've talked about this some too. I guess you've heard bow hunting trophy whitetail called a lot of things, and a lot of things is needed, persistence, and all this, but I want to tell you something new. Successful bow hunting for trophy whitetail is mathematics. It's all about acquiring the knowledge that will increase the mathematical odds that a trophy buck will walk in bow range of you. And hopefully the knowledge you get in this book will increase your odds that will happen. So I wanted to mention that bow hunting trophy whitetail and about any endeavor, especially a competition type endeavor, is all about mathematics. It's figuring out ways to increase the odds that will put the situation in your favor. So I wanted to mention that, and I talk about that quite a bit in this book. And then I talk about expectations. I've noticed this throughout my life, and I got to be more and more aware of it. So many times in life, we are given good advice, and we will try it, and when the results does not live up to our expectations, then we'll start chasing rabbits down empty holes. And I'm afraid that a lot of people never excel in life in any field of endeavor because of this. So just think about that, Joe. You might give somebody, show them something on a technique, or give them some advice on deer hunting. Let's say deer hunting in the big woods and hunting funnels, and they'll get up there and give that a try. And after 2 or 3 days, it don't work. Well, they're off studying and reading and trying to find another way to go about it, and they've not accepted that way that you give them. And before you know it, they're way off in left field. It's not because their execution was not correct. It's because they did have a flaw in performance, okay, but the flaw wasn't in execution. It was in the expectations of their execution. So you've got to have your expectations in line with reality. I go consult on people's property, and most of them see the value of what I show them. It's just so much common sense in it they can't help to. But then every now and then I know that hadn't happened yet maybe, but every now and then there's going to be a person or two that tries it for a whole year and they don't excel. They don't kill a big buck, and they might begin to question my ideas about what I showed them about hunting, but really their expectations may not have been in line with reality. Let's say the first week of November was unseasonably warm, or let's say they were wanting a big buck that they would consider a trophy on their property that particular year, or the one they thought was there maybe got killed. So before you know it, in a year or two, they're off looking at something else and trying other things, or they don't have the faith in that particular technique or in what they're doing to give it a really good, honest try and to stick with it. So we really got to keep our expectations in line with reality. There was one well-known bow hunter, and you're a good friend with him too, Joe, that he told me one time that he struggles in hunting mature bucks in the big woods. And I told him, I said, well, maybe you don't struggle with hunting mature bucks in the big woods. Maybe you struggle with your expectations of hunting mature bucks in the big woods. So I wanted to mention that, and all through my book, you'll find that word, and you'll find, even in the archery section and the hunting section, you'll find me talking about it quite a bit.
Yep.
So and then I talk quite a bit about woodsmanship skills. I'll tell you, often deer are killed in a manner that does not require woodsmanship skills, and we know of several ways you can do that. Maybe just open a window and a box blind on a food plot, Joe, or overbait or whatever. But this activity of merely shooting game will not stir the imaginations. It won't challenge the intellect. It won't awaken the soul. Neither will it feed the passion that is necessary to endear. That's a quote out of my book. And I think newcomers to our ranks should come to know the challenge of matching wits one-on-one with the game animal in their natural environment. This is where excitement is encountered, and it's where endurance thrives. I'm just afraid that a lot of people are cheating themselves out of the hunting experience. We are hunters and gatherers by nature, human beings are, and I'm just afraid that people are dropping out of our ranks and they're not really enjoying the full thrill of hunting because they're missing out a lot on the hunting part and the woodsmanship skills. There's outdoorsmen, you often hear that term, and there's a lot of us that's old-timers that are outdoorsmen because we had to get out there in the woods and learn it on our own, learn it without gimmicks, even learn it without trail cameras. And so I think that's important, and I think you could say this whole book teaches woodsmanship skills.
I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more, Bobby. I think well, I guess it is a problem, or what's happened is instant gratification now. A lot of the up-and-coming guys, it's instant gratification, and the way to do that is, shortcuts, bait or whatever it may be to get that instant gratification, get that deer killed, whereas, woodsmanship and matching wits, like you say, that might take an entire season or 2 seasons to kill one buck, right? I mean, that might not happen, in 3 different states in a year.
That's right. Most of us back in the day, of course, we weren't as mobile as you are. We couldn't jump on a plane and fly here and there, just didn't have the resources to do it. But we would target one deer, one individual buck every year, and usually in one state, and that was our challenge. And if we got that, and we were very pleased with that accomplishment. I might drive to another state and hunt a wildlife managed area, and I'd get acquainted with a deer, and maybe get after him. It might take 1 or 2 years to kill him, but we used our skills to outwit him. We challenged him, and we won. And we done that by reading the woods, learning to read the woods, learning to read sign, learning to understand what he was doing, getting to know his nature. And if people would get back to that and understand the thrill of hunting instead of the thrill of shooting, now people just want to text as soon as they get to that deer. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. On the last part of this is respect. So they want to text them pictures and get them data boys coming in and bragging and get them likes on the internet. Their purpose for hunting is not to match wits with that animal and have personal gratification of outwitting him. It's for pride. It's for a prideful thing, I think, and I believe that's why a lot of people drop out of our sport. It's just not what it used to be. And that goes right back to the last thing I mentioned, which is respect for the whitetail. I'm going to read a little quote here from a book, another one, and in this setting, I just took one of my trophies. I resisted the urge to move forward and immediately lay hands on him. I held off taking and sending pictures. He had given me something hard to push against, and for that, I will always be thankful. I sat down on a log and took a moment to reflect and to give respect, as all should. So that's one of the quotes in my book. And throughout this book, you'll find that I'm giving admiration to the whitetail deer. So that's a little summary of that's a little summary of it in 5 words that through life I have found is important to keep in line with reality and to understand the importance of, and I mention them often in this book. It's really a totally different, even though Passionate Quest is inside it, Joe, it is really a total different book, and I'm really excited about it. I say Final Quest, it's going to be my final bow hunting book that I'll ever write, and I just believe it's going to be successful. And I tell you, unless you understand this is my stewardship of trophy whitetail bow hunting. That's from the point of view this book was written. I put my soul and my heart into it because I want to pass on trophy whitetail bow hunting, and I want to pass it on in the sense of woodsmanship, in the sense of you can get out there and match wits with this animal and come out on top, and that's the whole theme of the book, and that's from the perspective that I wrote it.
Yeah, no, it's world class. I mean, I've read, the excerpts, and you and I have been talking about it for quite a while. And when I was up there, we you shared a lot of it with me, and it really is going to be incredible. I mean, if guys are serious whitetail hunters and want to up their game, this book can speed up their process of becoming real good woodsmen, having the real good woodsmanship. There's no question about that.
Well, I hope so, and that was my goal. And with every fiber been in me, that's what I work toward, and I really believe that I have been successful in that.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, we're excited about that. And guys, if you're listening, or you are listening, if you're interested in the book, it'll be on the ICO Gear website. You can order it on there. For our Amish listeners, you can call in to the ICO office, and we can take the orders over the phone. And guys, again, I can't encourage you enough that there's going to be a limited number of these books. So if you're interested, go ahead and get on it as soon as possible. The pre-order for the book is live. We should be getting the books in-house in the ICO warehouse towards the end of August up until, the middle of September. But as soon as we get them in, we'll start shipping them out. And, yeah, we're excited about it, Bobby.
Good. There's two versions of it, Joe. There's a limited edition leather bound, and it's the same interior, of course, but that book is going to be signed and numbered 160. Once 160 is sold, they're going to be gone. And I think probably close to half of them are already spoken for, and we hadn't really advertised it yet. So, but they're going to be, you want to talk about the price, or are you just going to have it on your website?
Yeah, it'll be on the website. I mean, we can certainly talk about the price. The leather-bound limited edition signed ones are $365, and the hardback cover ones are $79. 78. $365 for the leather-bound limited edition signed ones, and $78 for the regular hardback ones. It really will be a coffee table book. I mean, it's a big book, full color pictures, hardback, and it's 300 and something pages, Bobby?
351. Now, Passionate Quest was 2 something, but this actually has double the information. In Passionate Quest, I had that last chapter on the future of bow hunting, and I got pretty heavy into evolution. I took that one out of this one. So this is 351 pages of how-to hunting information.
Yep.
So I studied it pretty good and looked it over, and this has got about twice the information as in Passionate Quest. It's about double the information as far as how to hunt. And I'd have to say that probably the day the 160 leather-bound ones, the day that last one is sold, there won't be any more. I'd say they'll double in price. I've had 2 or 3 people talking to me about that, and they're buying several for an investment.
Yeah, oh yeah. So, yeah, without a doubt. Well, good. Well, we're excited about that. And, Bobby, let's transition over to something that I've gotten really passionate about and kind of addicted to. and that is shooting traditional bows and trying to kill a deer this year with a traditional bow. And I know that's something you've done, basically your whole life. What do you say we talk a little bit about some traditional bows, setups, and traditional bow hunting? How's that grab you?
Well, that's fine. I understand how you're addicted to it. I'll tell you, I've never went out and shot my compound since I started shooting traditional. I'll say this, and I actually started traditional since then, but since I've started getting serious about traditional, I've never just grabbed my compound bow and went out and shot it for pleasure. I shoot it to practice and to get ready for hunting, but I've never, if there's a recurve and a compound in my house, if I just want to shoot a bow to relax and for enjoyment, I want to shoot my recurve. I shot it yesterday. I'm going to the range to shoot it today. It is that much different in shooting a recurve than a compound. It's just that much more enjoyable and more relaxing and more pleasurable.
It is. It is. On the same token, it can get a little bit frustrating too. You get something dialed in and you're shooting a good little group, and then all of a sudden you'll have one or two arrows that maybe miss the mark by a foot, and that just doesn't happen with a compound.
Yeah, no, you're right. Hey, the difficulty is one thing that I think makes it enjoyable, but it will certainly teach you how to handle frustration.
Yes, without a doubt.
It's a lifelong experience learning to shoot a recurve well, and there's still, because you're so much physically involved in it.
Yeah.
There's still avenues that can go wrong. I look at it like this: crossbow shooting is a whole lot like gun shooting. You just pull a trigger, you aim a sight and pull a trigger. Compound shooting is a whole lot like crossbow shooting. Once you've got it drawn back and anchored, you aim a sight and you pull a trigger. But now, when you start talking about recurve, it's a whole different avenue. It's not like compound, not nearly like compound. There's so much involved. You in the traditional parts, you don't have a sight. You have to release with your fingers, and that's the number one problem right there, releasing with your fingers. And so many people release on the sight picture. When your arrow floats around to where it needs to be, and you think you're calibrated right, you'll release. So that causes all kinds of problems too. But that's a lot to get into. But yes, it is. The difficulty is so much higher. But once you learn to shoot well, then I think I can shoot up with most compound shooters once you learn to shoot well. But it has been a lifelong learning.
Yeah, it is not get better in 2 or 3 days. It is baby step after baby step. At least that's been my experience.
Yeah, and shooting a gun, shooting a crossbow, and shooting a compound bow can all be done fairly well static. And that's not the correct way to shoot a compound or a recurve. The correct way is about the same, but you can shoot static. With a gun, you're taught to hold dead on the target and don't move. You don't want to move. You want to squeeze that trigger, and if you move, you might move your sight. Well, you can follow that theme in the crossbows and to a degree compounds because of the let-off and the release aid. But shooting a recurve has to be dynamic. You have to win the tug of war against the bow when the arrow is loosed, and you have to win it on both ends. So it is so much more different in that avenue. That compound with the stop and the let-off and the stop in the valley, then it's not got a lot of power coming against you. But with the recurve, the cast of the limbs, the poundage of the bow is trying to win the tug of war against you, and you must counteract that, and you must be winning the tug of war to some degree when you release. Now, if you're not, let's just take your release hand and the bow, same thing. If you're not pulling straight away from the target and pushing straight toward the target, when you release your bow and your release hand, and when I say your bow hand and release hand, that would take the bow riser and the string and consequently the arrow in any of these directions. If you're not winning the tug of war straight away from and toward the mark, then when you release, your hand can pluck to the right. It can go forward toward the target. It can go down. It can go up. It can go in any direction, because you've not winning that tug of war. It can go any direction, and so can the arrow to a slight degree, or sometimes to a great degree. So you must be winning the tug of war. You must be dynamic. You must be winning the tug of war straight toward and straight away from the target. And I will add this: you must be doing it with the short, strong back muscles. Arm muscles are too long to be controlled precisely every time.
Bobby,
so, in a nutshell, Joe, it's that simple. You've got to be dynamic.
So if I miss, Bobby, like if, I shoot a 2-arrow group and I get them right in the 10, and then all of a sudden I miss, I consistently miss the exact same way every time, and it'll be 8 to 10 inches to the right of where I'm aiming. What am I doing there that is causing it to go right?
Well, a number of things could, but you're probably plucking the string.
Okay.
You're probably not increasing dynamic pressure. You're probably not applying dynamic energy straight away and straight toward the target. Of course, you can't be if it is not your sighting mechanism. So to begin with, forget instinctive, forget it all while you're learning to shoot. Put a spot, a good bright spot on your backstop, and put the tip of the arrow on that spot and learn to shoot the bow. Now, I'll tell you the reason I'm saying that. People say, well, that's cheating, that's sighting. Well, listen, I'm giving you advice that will improve your shooting and help you learn to shoot a bow. If you miss and you're trying to shoot instinctive or gap shooting, your arrow could have been to the right or to the left. You could have missed because of the direction your arrow was pointing, or you could have missed because of your execution. And until you know why you missed, then you cannot improve. Mm-hmm. So remove the need to aim while you're learning. Put the tip of an arrow on a precise spot. And if you release and you know your arrow was on that spot, then you know you have a flaw in your execution. So it's so important to learn why you miss.
There you go. All right, yeah, that's good, and it is an ongoing process. And my plan is to keep shooting it this summer, try to get in some hunts with it this fall. Certainly not going to give up the compound. I'm going to keep shooting the compound. But it is so addictive, and I just imagine what it's like to take a target buck with the recurve bow. I mean, that would just be pretty amazing. And you've done that quite a bit, hadn't you, Bobby? You've killed a bunch of bucks with your traditional equipment.
I have. Yeah, I have. I'm 70 now, and my strength's not where I would like it to be to shoot the poundage I need. One of the most important things about shooting a recurve is not to overbow yourself, and I see it so many times. I used to be strong. I could shoot a 65-pound recurve, shot it in competition just like I could a 20-pound now. But if you're not physical and you don't build up to it, you got to build up to it. And why I want to say this too, while you're learning, get a real lightweight bow. One of those Genesis bow that they use in the national program is good, or a 30-pound recurve. It's nearly impossible to shoot well when you're under tension, and particularly when the wrong muscles are under tension. Your arm muscles will get involved if you're trying to shoot too heavy a bow, where your back muscles should be involved, and your arm muscles should be totally out of the picture. Structural alignment should hold the bow back, and then back muscles, of course. But if you watch any Olympic athlete, how fluid they execute their task, then the reason they look so smooth and fluid, and when you try it, it's just awful, is because they've learned to relax the muscles that are not needed. Muscles are a brake, and if you've got muscles engaged that are not needed to complete the task, then you're really sloppy, and the execution will not turn out well. So I think a lot of people overbow themselves, and it's really important to shoot the kind of accuracy I'm after, and I shoot in competition. You've got to have a bow that you can handle real well, and that you can get your arm muscles and muscles not needed out of the equation.
Bobby, what for whitetail hunting, once a guy gets comfortable with pulling weight and gets his shot execution down, is there a pound recurve or longbow that you would, a poundage like, I hear a lot of guys say, hey, something around that 45 to 48 pound range. What is your advice on that?
Joe, 45 to 48 pound is a good place. The 42, I've killed a lot of deer with my 42 pound tall tine. That's a good place to be, but now understand it ain't all about the weight of the bow. It's kinetic energy, and the weight of the arrow and the design of the broadhead are all important, and the tuning of the bow. You want the bow to slap that deer sideways. You want it to be straightened up and traveling straight when it hits the deer. But
let's get into that. Let's get into the. So let's say you get to a point where you can shoot a 45 to 48 pound recurve, and you got your arrow. Let's get into that and talk arrow setup. I've got that on my list here of questions. Walk us through your arrow setup and your broadhead setup, with weight and length of the arrow, the point weight, the broadhead, the fletchings. Let's dive into that if you don't mind.
Well, what I'm going to tell you is going to make it pretty easy, but you better make it easy because
yeah,
it's as easy as you can make it. It's simple, but it really ain't easy. You're sitting in a tree stand, you're bundled up, it's cold. You're bundled up, you hadn't drew your bow in 2 hours, and then a giant buck walks up, and you got to stand up and thread the needle at 18 or 20 yards. The easiest we can make it, Joe, it still ain't easy.
Right.
So I want to give you, what I'm going to tell you is about arrow weight and broadhead design, but it will also help you put the arrow where you need to be, and I'll explain that. I like 9.5, 10 grams an inch. I like a arrow 30 inch. I leave them full length to begin with, and that's 30 inches on some, on most of them around 30. And then let's say it's 10 grains an inch. Then you're talking about 300 grains right there. And then I add 100 grain brass insert, so you've got 400 grains of arrow, and that will give you whatever you want. Sometimes I'll use 150 grain broadhead, and sometimes I'll use a 200 grain. So we're talking 550, 600 grains total on the arrow.
Yep.
We're not trying to shoot a deer at 25 yards. My whole book and my whole setup about deer hunting is 15 to 18 yards. I set it up close to the game. I know how because I'm a hunter. I know where the deer is going to be standing when I shoot it. So with a recurve bow, we make it easy. Same way of a compound. In a compound, I want every one of my sight pins on his heart. I want to be that close. When you're that close, doubt does not enter your mind, and buck fever don't set in. You can execute with confidence, and that's what we want with a recurve. So we've got a real heavy arrow for two reasons. One is for penetration. I mean, we're not shooting 80-pound bows, so we want good penetration. And also, that heavy arrow puts our point-on distance closer. Before I get into that, let me mention broadheads. I like a long tapered broadhead, and I like a single. I don't like three blades. I like a just two-bladed broadhead, and I want a long taper for good penetration. Just let me mention that because you mentioned broadheads. And also, you want to turn the broadhead horizontal. The arrow goes through a paradox, the archer's paradox it's called. When it comes out of the bow, it flexes. And I do not want that blade sticking up and down vertically. I don't want it catching air as that arrow flexes. I want it laying sideways, and that way as the arrow goes through its paradox, it's not resisting on the front end. So, and another advantage to having it horizontal is that you can see the ferrule of the broadhead, and you can see your arrow shaft, and that is what you're going to be aiming with.
Okay.
Now, I use gap shooting. I have in my 3D archery for years, and that's what I do. But let's just eliminate the need for that. You're going to miss enough deer because you're in a tree, you've got to bend over to begin with and try to keep that T form. You're trying to get in line. You're trying to relax your arms and tighten your back. You've got heavy clothes on. You're trying to do that in the excitement of a giant buck in front of you. So let's just, fellas, just make it easy as we can. With that heavy arrow and all that weight up front, if you'll move your knocking point, and most bows are tillered for 3 fingers under, and tiller means the weight of one limb compared to the weight of the other, the poundage. If you'll move that knocking point about 3/4 of an inch up, and then touch that knocking point, then with an arrow that heavy and say a 45-pound bow, you should be close to point on around 20 yards.
Yep.
So that means that you can aim the tip of your arrow at the spot that you want to hit. You can put the tip of your arrow in the crease of the leg or right above that leg knuckle, and you should be able to release at 20 yards and hit that spot. Now, from then, Joe, we do what's called, or I do, and a lot of people do, what's called a hard crawl. That means you will come down the string, maybe a 1/4 inch, and you'll put you on another knocking point, a brass knocking point, or I like to tie a knocking point on. I actually like to tie my serving below my arrow down that far on the string. And then if you'll put the top of your glove or tab and your finger, make sure your glove or tab ain't on it and your finger's down a 1/4 inch, but you line those up with the hard crawl, and then that will give you another point on distance that you can put the tip of the arrow on the deer and hit it if it's like 15 yards.
Yep.
So with this system, if the deer is 5 to 18 yards, you come down to your hard crawl, you put your finger on it, and that raises the arrow up. You anchor the same way and everything, and the deer, you're going to hit within a couple of inches of where the tip of your arrow is. And then if he's 20, you take your finger, you get it off the hard crawl, you go on up and touch the bottom of your arrow, and you put the arrow on the aiming spot, and you're good there. So that is the system, the aiming system that a lot of recurve shooters use and that I use and use successfully.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, and you've been doing it forever, and I have definitely developed a crawl. I'm still trying to get my arrows dialed in. I'm working on them a little bit. Working on getting a quiver and trying to get what I've been shooting like crazy, but I'm trying to get everything together so when I do finish off the crawl and, tie a knocking point there, I've got my quiver on the bow, I've got the arrows in the bow, everything's like it's going to be, so I don't have to go back and redo that stuff. Do you think that's wise?
Yeah, you won't notice much difference, Joe. You really won't. I've tried it both ways, and people talk about do everything like that, but it's like so many things in archery. In reality, it's not as much as people want to fantasize it is. But no, there won't be a whole lot of difference, and you'll find that the difference is the weight of the bow. Those heavy arrows and heavy points will help stabilize you. That's why I like to use a stabilizer, and I want everything as heavy as I can get it. When you release, of course, there's going to be some vibration and a little movement to that bow. The heavier it is, the less movement there will be before the arrow clears it. So all of that weight will definitely help you. And I want to say this, too, as far as stabilization. A lot of people talk about front and center balance, and they'll say, well, Bobby, you got 300 grains up front. That's 20% or something. That's a heavy front of center balance. I don't think you can get too heavy, Joe.
Okay.
I really don't. Once you get that arrow moving, I do not want the cast of my bow. I do not want my bowstring pushing that arrow through the air. Once I get my arrow moving, I want that point pulling my arrow through the air. Your arrow is so much more stable like that. It stabilizes so much quicker. So that heavy weight up front serves two things, and the heavy arrow, it helps you get your point of aim closer, like 20 yards or maybe even under, and it also really stabilizes your arrow.
That's great to hear. Yeah, I definitely am going to have 250 to 300 grains up front. What about your fletchings? Aren't you like a 3-5-inch fletchings? Isn't that what you like? Feathers. Yeah, that's what I meant. Feathers, not fletchings.
Yes, feather fletching. They make veins now that's got some grooves in them. I've got to experiment with them a little, but they might work. But I'm going to tell you something. Of course, I know you like mechanical broadheads, Joe, but if they hadn't invented these little short feathers, they never would have been no mechanical broadhead ever got popular, because in my compound and my recurve shooting, I always use 5-inch feathers and always have. I can tune my bow where to shoot a broadhead just like a field point, but I don't care. I want that extra stability in that arrow. I want my arrow flying straight when he hits that deer, and I don't want it hitting a limb on the way to the deer, because the tail end wasn't where my eyes was looking. I have always used 5-inch feathers, and I always will, and especially with a recurve, you need them, but you need them with a compound too, in my opinion. I just do not like them little small feathers. With a broadhead out there, the broadhead's trying to guide the arrow too, and some of them feathers are small as a broadhead. So that broadhead's trying to guide the arrow too. I like a fixed blade, and the feathers will stabilize it fine. You want to spin your arrow and make sure that tip is rotating perfectly still, and that knock too. The knock's actually more important than the tip. You want to spin that arrow and look at both of them and make sure they're rotating perfectly still. Then heat that. I use heat melt glue to put my broadhead on, Joe. Heat that a little bit and turn it and get that arrow horizontal, that broadhead horizontal, the way it's going to be sitting on your bow, and then check it, spin it and check it. If you have to rotate it a full half a turn or a full turn to get it spinning a little true, sometimes sometimes there'll be a little more glue on one side than the other of your insert, and you'll have to rotate a little, but you can fool with it there. And if you're using a good broadhead that's put on straight, you can get it straight pretty easy.
Is there a particular knock that you like a kind of knock? You mentioned that was, super important.
It's super important that it's spinning straight.
Okay.
And it's super important that it's not too tight on your string. You need to get a knock that snaps on and off your string fairly easy. I missed a 185-inch typical once in Illinois because my knocks, I had not loosened them up. They were too tight for my string, and they were popping on and off hard, and I knew that, and I meant to fix them, and I did. And then when we got up there, and it was like in the teens, they was even tighter. And when I shot, my bow made a real loud noise, and my arrow hit high, and I thought, what in the world? And after he left, I shot a time or two at a leaf, and I realized that it had increased the sound of my bow nearly double and really affected accuracy. So the tightness of the arrow knock onto the string is very important. And I'd rather buy them right. Like Rod Jenkins said one time, we went to too much trouble to get these arrows on straight for you to be filing on them, Bobby. But anyway, I file on mine a little bit, but I file both sides I'm particular about. But anyway, it's better to buy, he's right, it's better to buy the correct knock to fit your string. That's what is important more than the brand, the particular brand of knock. And I want to say this, too. I was shooting with somebody the other day, recurve shooting a couple of days ago, and he had not tied a lower serving on his string. You've got to have a serving above and below that arrow knock. through high-speed video, we've proven that if there's not a bottom serving, that owl will run down the string as your string goes forward. So if you haven't got a bottom knock serving and you notice some high hits you can't account for, that's probably it. The looser the arrow knock, the further it's going to run down the string before it breaks free. So always have a top and bottom serving. Dental floss makes good serving material. And when you serve top and bottom, give yourself a little wiggle room there, 3/16 or 1/8 a little bigger. So when the string comes back at the angle, it will not pinch, tighten up on that arrow knock.
Yeah. No, that's good. Speaking of bows, recurve, longbow. What have you shot much with a longbow, or you've always done recurve?
Yeah, I've shot a little bit with a longbow. They've got some modern longbows now that are really fast, but I don't care. They're still going to be. You're going to have to increase. You're going to have to get one of a weight poundage, probably 5 pounds more, to have the cast of the arrow and the connect hinge that are recurve with the same poundage. So I've always shot a recurve. Some people love the traditional aspects of the longbow and love to shoot them, and they're very accurate, in their right hands, and that's fine. It's kind of a personal preference, but that's not what I want, mainly because I'd have to shoot that much more poundage, and like I said, it's hard to get in line and relax the right muscles if you're under quite a bit of weight.
Is there a bow brand? Not, we don't drop a lot of brands on the podcast, but is there a brand like over the years that you've really, like a Boyer or somebody you've enjoyed working with, or you'd recommend if a guy was looking to get a bow?
The good ones, the Black Widow is good. I really like Call Time. Brian said he's working on a new design now for them. He's back at it full time, and I really like them. Gene and Barry use them. I think they're outstanding bows, and that's what I prefer. But the top bows, it's more the person. It's like anything else. It's more the person shooting it than the bow. But you do want a bow that you have confidence in, and I just like the Tall Time.
Yep. No, that's good. That's good. Good to know.
There's a lot of good bows.
Yep. Well, Bobby, we've been hammering this thing for about an hour now. I appreciate it, as always, you coming on again. Anything else you want to talk to the guys about before we sign off here?
No, I've enjoyed it. Appreciate you having me on. And but I've got 2 chapters in my book about shooting a traditional bow. It covers everything. The first chapter covers the physical part of it, and the second chapter covers the mental. People might think, well, you could have done without the second chapter if you talk about physically how to shoot. But, Joe, you got to understand that when you get to the top performers, that it's the mental part that makes the difference. I was watching an Olympic archer the other day. A couple of my friends are in it, and you notice one archer's got a low bow shoulder, and one's got a high bow shoulder, and one's got a high elbow in the back, and you see a lot of differences in their form, but what really separates them is their mental game. That's the difference. But understand that the mental only kicks in if the physical is at 100%. You can't pluck the string and then be at the top of your game on the mental aspects and expect to perform well. So I cover both of those aspects and cover them pretty thoroughly.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to read that, and really excited about doing a little hunting this year with the recurve. I'm excited about, we got it pretty set up when I was up there shooting with you, and I've gotten some of those Simmons, I think they're called Swamp Shark broadheads in that are tapered like you're talking about, and we're going to razor sharpen those things up and maybe try end of this week or some next week go try and shoot a pig or two, and then get geared up for deer season, because it'll be here in South Carolina in no time.
Good deal. I wish you well. You're embarking on a journey. I'll tell you that. It's going to take you a lot of places mentally.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, Bobby, I appreciate it, and yeah, we'll be in touch soon. And thank you as always. I know you got a lot going on, so we're very appreciative of you coming on the podcast and sharing your knowledge with us.
Thank you a lot, Joe.
All right, thank you.
Good talking.
Yes, sir. You too.